Good morning, everybody. I'm Stylianos Hatzipanagos, and I'm the chair of this session. Apologies for the delay. We had some technical issues which we managed to overcome. So we'll start this straight away. And we have the title of the parallel session is Students at the Heart Community. And we have a wonderful set of presenters. We'll start the first presentation is by Sue Beckingham from Sheffield-Hallam University. So Sue is a National Fellow, Principal Lecturer in Digital Analytics and Technologies in the Department of Computing at Sheffield-Hallam University, and she has the lead role in learning, teaching, and assessment. She's also a visiting fellow at Gill University and the senior fellow of the Higher Education Academy. She's going to talk to us about students as partners. And the title of her talk is Students as Partners, Co-Creating Innovative Scholarship, Reflections on Achievement using the 4M framework. Sue, over to you.
Thank you very much.
All you need to do is you'll share the screen by clicking on the green arrow. The thing I want to say is we'll have two sets of presentations, which will be approximately 20 minutes, and this will give us 10 minutes for each set of presenters to be discussing with the audience, to be answering questions related to the content of the session. If we have time in the end, we will open up the floor in a panel kind of type discussion. Sue, over to you. Thanks very much.
That's wonderful. Okay, so you saved me the first slide. So I am going to be talking about students as partners, and we'll tell you a little bit about that just for the benefits in case anybody's not come across that terminology or had experience of it. And I'm going to adopt the 4M framework, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well to say how I'm going to share the outputs of my case study that I'm going to be sharing with you. So to begin with, students as partners, if we take this definition from Cook-Sather et al., it's where you contribute equally. It's a reciprocal process so that it's of benefit for the students and for the staff. And it can take very many different forms. So Bovell et al., Kathy Bovell's done an awful lot about students as partners, and certainly if you're interested in this, I would look up her work. And there are a variety of different roles. And in fact, some of the examples for students as partners projects could have multiple roles within the same project. So there's the idea that you could be a consultant, the students could be consultants with you, developing all sorts of things, innovative or otherwise, around learning and teaching. And part of that will mean that there'll be some research taking place. It could be co-designing the way that you actually deliver your teaching. And then there's a multitude of different things where there can be representative voices, which may be because they're present on various different committees across the university. So there's lots of different ways that you can do it. But one of the things I would say is that whilst there are very many examples of large scale university-wide led projects, you know, what I'm going to be sharing today is just something that I did off my own back. It was an idea that I was inspired, and I'll tell you how that came about. So, you know, it can be just with a few students, it can be with many students, it can be paid, it can be unpaid, but as long as the students get something out of it, that's the most important thing. So I'll not labour too much on this, but again, if you want to find out more about students as partnerships, there's a fantastic framework that was created some years ago now by the Higher Education Academy, now Advanced HE. But what's really important to pull out here is the values of having a students as partners, projects going on. And as I've said, it's really important in my mind to make sure that the students know why they're being part of this, what they're going to get out of this, what skills they're going to develop, and revisit that throughout the project, because that's really important for them at the end of it, because they're things that they can draw out, they can add to their CV potentially, they can add to their LinkedIn profile. and that sort of thing. So it's really important that you can help them articulate using this project as an example to exemplify skills that they're developing as they go along. So the 4M framework, this is something that's come out from Canada. Well, the 4Ms are nothing new, but they've adopted these to look at the way scholarship of learning and teaching is disseminated. So they've taken the 4Ms as the micro, meso, macro and mega, as the individual being the micro stage, the meso as the departmental stage or faculty part of the organisation. The macro is how it's disseminated across your institution, the university as a whole, and the mega is where it actually goes beyond that. And Simmons and Taylor have taken that a little bit further. So they've talked about the individual level is the personal reasons people engage in the scholarship of teaching and learning. So from my perspective, what I'm going to draw out of this is what the students got out of it, which I'll come to later. And then it's the importance of ongoing collegial and leadership support, so that when these things are shared, your research, whether it's your personal research with students or any type of scholarship, that's acknowledged and shared across your department so that people can benefit from that. But what's really interesting is when you get to the next stage and it's making the connections across disciplinary boundaries, because there's a lot we can learn from each other in different parts of the university and disciplines. And then equally, if there's an opportunity to then share what you're doing in terms of research, this can be across similar disciplines, but at other universities, of course, and that could be nationally or internationally, or it can be interdisciplinary. And then a final one that was on the website for the Toronto Learning and Teaching website. You know, they kind of pull out what's actually important, and it's the activities that can help people learn about the research. And that's something that we found that was going to be quite important for our work, that we wanted to share that with staff and students. And there's some of the examples that I'll pull out in the case studies, so that everybody can benefit. So it's not just sharing a research paper, it's the actual practice. How do you put this into practice within your classrooms? So I'm going to go on to now the example that I'm going to talk about, my Students as Partners case study, which has run over the last 4 years. And this was inspired by a conference that was held at my own university. It was actually the second iteration of the conference. It was Social Media for Learning in Higher Education conference. This has now gone out. We hosted it for 3 years, and it then went to Nottingham Trent, and then it went to Edge Hill University and Strathclyde, and Strathclyde are actually going to be leading it this year. But what was interesting for this second year was giving the students an opportunity to apply for a place at the conference free. So I happened to be teaching a student as I was this dissertation supervisor, and he was interested in social media within higher education. So I suggested he applied, and he got a free place. And then 3 second-year students also took an interest, and off their own bat, you know, they had to apply themselves. They attended the conference. They really enjoyed it, and that kind of inspired me to say to them, you know, how about we get together and have an informal special interest group to talk about this further. And at that point I hadn't got any concrete plans of where this was going. You know, at this point I wasn't thinking, you know, this is going to be a research project. I just thought it would be good to have a chat with the students. And after our first meeting, they decided that they didn't like the word SIG, special interest group. So they decided to call the group SMASH, which stands for Social Media for Academic Studies at Hallam, and went on to create their own logo, which we've used for a lot of things that we've then since disseminated. So we wanted to look at both social media tools and other digital tools that could help with learning and teaching. And the students have got some ideas themselves because they were already using these individually. So we really kind of recognise that the development, I guess, of the smartphone has changed things so much that access to any time, anywhere learning and information was really important. And of course, with social media, a lot of these tools have their own apps, the majority of them do, so they're easily accessible. And it's something students can scroll through easily. They get notifications on their phone, and of course they can access them wherever they've got Wi-Fi, or if they've got access to the internet. So in our initial meetings, we talked about what we might want to achieve, and there was a lot of brainstorming going on and a lot of ideas, and I kind of had to rein it in slightly in terms of the students still had their academic studies to get on with. You know, we were going to meet fortnightly, and it was kind of, we'll see where things go as the plans develop. But what we wanted to do was to capture all the ideas. So we set up a shared folder using Google Docs, and we captured, one of the students took ownership of making some action notes. And we use this as a space to develop our ideas, but also to keep ideas on the side that we weren't ready to use. And then we sort of discussed when we'd start to develop things, where we're going to share them. Because it was important that whatever we did, we wanted to share it out further, and starting with our own department. So the first thing that we did was to try and look at creating a framework, I guess we called it, to explain where social media is actually used. So we came up with these three points, which is where social media is used for learning activities. So that could be inside and outside of the classroom. It could be used for collaboration, so helping the students to actually organise their learning as well, with others and individually. And then the third one, which I feel is very, very important, is helping the students understand how they can use social and digital portfolios to showcase the outcomes of what they're doing as students, and to share that more widely using various social media, for example, having a LinkedIn profile. Over time, we then added a fourth pillar, and that was student support, because we recognised that there was lots of opportunities for students to find out information, and certainly within my own institution, we've looked at how we communicate with students, and you know, there is an overuse of email, and we recognise that not all students read every single email because of the volume coming through. So it was looking at how we could use various social media tools to share succinct messages, and careers well-being are two great examples where they use social media now to share things with students. So looking at the 4M framework, I've put some double arrows in there, and I'm going to leave the micro to the last, and then share some examples of each of the other levels, because as the students started to develop this project and then created outputs and resources, which I'll talk about, the reflection came later, and actually ended up being a publication. So it's not kind of a linear thing, you go backwards and forwards, because the micro bit is about what they've got from this opportunity. So some of the things that we actually created, and I've put the links in there for people to look afterwards, and I'll share these slides afterwards. But the students over time created 2 sets of cards. The first set of cards, which has information on the flip side of them, was 7 ways to use, and they took various different social media tools, and on the back of them was a list of things that could be used with that social media tool. The second set of cards, which they called reverse social media, which I was quite proud of actually, because they realised that the pedagogy was important. So thinking about what do you want to achieve, and then how can the tools help you. So they started off with various things there, and you can see there's networking, project management, and on the flip side there's the tools that can actually help with that. How we used these were as a focal point for workshops. So we held a number of workshops within our department and further afield in actual fact, and invited both staff and students, and it was a really fascinating conversation, and the staff and students got a lot out of that, and certainly inspired staff to develop activities in their own teaching. The students then, I have a blog called Social Media for Learning, and the students gave a guest post on that, and that was then picked up by the university. So Sheffield-Hallam had a blog, and this was a post, actually, if you remember back, and maybe down in London, although I know people are far afield because it's distance learning, we had some terrible snow that winter. The Beast from the East was what it was called, and certainly it stopped me getting into university because the buses stopped, everything stopped for a short time. The students wrote a post about how we can carry on learning. So this was kind of pre-COVID, and the things that, you know, we've had to get used to, not being a distance learning university. So that was useful, and they got sort of credit for actually creating that post. In 2017, we held the 3rd Social Media for Learning conference, and the students presented their work thus far at that conference, which again was a fantastic thing to have on their CV, and it's the first time that they've presented in that way, and they really enjoyed that. They went on to write further blog posts, and as I say, this is an iteration over 4 years, and certainly when COVID hit, the students wrote a number of posts that would help both staff and students. So there was a remote learning guide written by students for students, which actually had an amazing traction, and was seen looking at the analytics, not just nationally, but seen internationally, because we shared this through social media. The students went on to present at external conferences. So this is getting into the broader higher education community. So we presented at the Change Agents Conference at the University of Winchester, a rather long trip from Sheffield, but an enjoyable day. They then went on to present at the Social Media for Learning conference, the 5th one, which was at Edge Hill University. And then 2 of the students came with me down to London. We were invited to speak at the BET conference, which again was an incredible experience, although quite daunting, and the great big arena there. If you've never been to London Excel, it's pretty big, but they enjoyed that. And then affirmation, because as the work was out and we shared the work through social media, it was recognised by other people. This is Sarah Knight from GISC, and she was at Staff University Learning and Teaching Conference, and the keynote there had actually picked it up, Eric Stoller. We then went on to publish, and this was a reflective case study really on what the students had gained from the work that they'd done. So, you know, they've got a publication to their name now, and a small piece that went into the Developing Your Teaching Towards Excellence case study, and also I've written a further publication talking about the students' work. So you can see that, you know, this kind of escalates. There's lots of different things that can be achieved through the project over time, you know, unanticipated. And we've just kind of discussed, you know, would you like to present at a conference? Let's put an application in and see if it gets accepted, and, you know, we'll see how it goes. And it's those kind of steps really that, you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained. And the comments here that you can see are what the students have actually achieved. And this is where I think it's really important to come back to the reflections at the micro level. What's in it for the students is really, really important to me. And they learnt a lot from each other. And the students were at different levels. In the first year that we were together, there was a final year student and 3 second years. In the next iteration, a first year joined us. A couple went on placement, although one of them kept in touch remotely. And, you know, new people joined us, people dropped off. So they got to meet a variety of different students at different levels, and all got something from that. And, you know, this development of a virtual community of practice, I think, was really important for them. You know, it's developed their confidence in lots of different ways. You know, so certainly a few of the students were very shy, and I could see them grow through the experience of this project and the time that they were actually involved. So just to finish off now, the overall achievements, and these are some of the things that we together picked out and put into our publication, was that the benefit of the peer learning, the development of a variety of different skills, so that working together and working in a different way online, because everything, as I say, was within the Google Docs, and sometimes the students were remote. And doing that at a pace that they felt was achievable. That was the most important things, because, you know, study comes first. And pulling back again to the transferable skills that they had developed, and helping them be able to articulate them, as I say, is a really important thing, I think, to help them see. And overall, we've got an open educational resource. So there's actually a tab within my own Social Media for Learning blog, and that's got the card decks that we've created. It's got links to the blog posts that they've written, and they come with a Creative Commons license, so they're open for other people to adopt, adapt, and share on through Creative Commons license. So, you know, that's something that they can sort of talk about and have talked about as they've progressed through university and gone on to graduate. And that's me done. So I've rushed through it a little bit quickly, but I hope that will help catch up with time for the others, so that I've got some time for questions. Are you muted?
Yeah, I was muted. Sorry about that. Yeah, thanks very much, Sue. I thought that was wonderful. That was wonderful. At the right, a good pace, and you covered quite a lot of stuff, quite a lot of areas in there on the topic you've chosen to talk to us about. We'll have some time for questions, and I'm looking at the charts, and we had a question from Linda, and the question was about the gains for students and staff. And you gave us an account of the experience and gains for the students. What about the staff?
We did. Funnily enough, that has been in other presentations. We have pulled that out, and
right.
Yeah, the staff did learn new skills. Right. They learnt about new approaches to doing things, and they've implemented that within their teaching. And what was fascinating was seeing the conversations, because when we had the workshops, we mixed the tables up. So there was both the student presenters part of this project, but then there was also invited students on the courses within the department, and, you know, they had the conversation with their tutors. So it was, you know, a really nice dialogue, really, to sort of talk about things that they would appreciate, you know, as well as staff sort of taking on board and learning new things themselves, and of course sharing what they're doing in different ways.
Excellent, thank you. And I have a couple of questions, and then I will open the floor to the other panelists if I have any questions in relation to your presentation. One of my questions is resistance from the staff in as far as the students' partners kind of concept. And in my experience, staff sometimes frequently are happy in engaging students the consultant role and the representative role, but less enthusiastic about the co-researcher role and the pedagogical co-design role. Is that a problem, you think, sometimes, or is it a situation which you encountered where you were trying to engage staff?
Well, engaging staff, I mean, they were invited to the workshops, so
Right.
no, I didn't invite anybody else to join this particular project, I led it sole, but in terms of different experiences that we have at Sheffield-Hallam and other students as partners initiatives, sometimes an incentive can help. So we tend to have an annual call for projects, and one of those is directly aligned with employing students as researchers. So the funding, the majority of the funding has to pay for the student. So this has developed over time. So you know, that can help staff to perhaps think that that might be a useful thing. I guess there's got to be a passion in the research of learning and teaching. So pedagogic research, scholarship of learning and teaching, which, you know, some staff are perhaps more veered towards their discipline research, you know, and, you know, balancing the time between the two. Some people can, some people, you know, sort of feel that that's a step too far. So I guess it's got to be a choice. You know, I think what's interesting is being able to share that. You know, if you can share the outputs, at least they can benefit from that, even if they don't engage with research themselves. But also, you know, colleagues could be your inspiration for another project. If pedagogic research is your thing, then, you know, you could go to them and say, you know, well, what would you like to find out, and do that on their behalf. So there's all sorts of different things that we can look at that could help improve our approach to all forms of learning and teaching assessment, feedback.
Yeah, as the audience says, there's a strong element of dialogue there that facilitates this process as well. Also, there was a question about safety and access. And let's not forget, we are talking about something which even in 2021 can be controversial, the use of social media in higher education. One of the previous employers I worked in, they had a policy which very succinctly forbade the staff to participate in any social media activities that with students.
We could talk about this for a very long time. I think that's a subject for another matter. But no, I think you know, you forbid people to use social media, then they'll do it underground anyway. Far better to educate the students how to use it safely and professionally. And certainly I've had many a session with students within my own courses, my department, my university, and nationally and internationally. You know, we've talked about this. I've talked about this with colleagues, that it really is important to have the conversations to make sure that students know how to present themselves professionally, because they're doing it anyway in their social space time. And yet if that's open and they do that unprofessionally, that could have a very negative impact on their future. So far better to have a look at it, have the conversations, and untease those issues.
Okay, great, thank you. And a final question before we need to move on to the next presentation is, were there any other stakeholders involved? For instance, somebody in the audience asked about parents. If there were any other stakeholders, how did they contribute to the success of SMASH?
I've not looked at the school community. I work in the Department of Computing and Business and Technology, so I've not had that kind of experience. But I think, you know, there's definitely a potential to have those discussions. You know, certainly in education, I'm sure they're thinking about that too. But it's not something that I've experienced. Yeah, it's just tended to be other universities, you know, conferences.
In the context of HE, yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Excellent. Great. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Right, so we move on to the next presentation. We have 3 presenters. And the 3 presenters are, can you hear me? You can.
Yep.
Yeah, excellent. The 3 presenters are Elisabetta Lando, Ellie Gill, and Noor Adnan. So just a few things about the presenters. Elisabetta has been working as an educational technologist in the higher education sector, have a ground as an educator, a coach, together with her enthusiasm for digital education and innovation means that she's very interested in exploring effective learning experiences for all students. Ellie Gill is a support officer in the university, supporting the MA in academic practice, the academic skills team, and recruiting and assisting the student lead projects that are running this year. And Ellie and Elisabetta will be joined by Noor Adnan, who is currently studying computer science at City University. Over to you.
Thank you very much. And sorry, I jumped the gun there. I put up the presentation as you were presenting us. How are we?
You did the right thing.
Sorry about that. Very enthusiastic. How are we for time? Do we have a bit less time? Are we running a bit late?
If we finish we are running a bit late. If we finish by 11:38, this will give people 2 minutes to move on to the next session. Is that okay?
Okay, sure. That includes any questions as well.
Yeah,
of course.
absolutely.
Right. Okay. So we'll go along at a brisk pace. Thank you so much for inviting us to talk about our project. And thank you very much, Sue. That was very interesting. So a few things I may pick up from what you said in your presentation as well. This is a project. It's a pilot project. It's the first of its type at City University, and it's a digital support community. As mentioned, my name's Elisabetta Lando, and I'm an educational technologist in the digital education team. And I'll let Ellie present herself. Ellie?
Hi, I'm Ellie Gill, and I'm a support officer in LEAD. I'm also joined by Noor.
Hello, so I'm Noor and I study computer science at City University as introduced before, and I'm one of the student digital support community assistants. Hello, everyone.
Brilliant, thank you, Noor. And as you can see from our lovely visual here, created by our student assistants, support assistants rather, you can see Noor's avatar there, the curly hair there, so there we go. So yes, so I think we're going to start off with Ellie, who will speak about why we decided to try and create a student community online. So Ellie, over to you.
Thanks, Elisabetta. So as we all know, sort of the transition to online learning was rather abrupt. Obviously, we all had to work from home with a notice of almost overnight. And it was something we really sort of recognised in terms of, you know, students just sort of being thrown into the deep end in terms of having to sort of change the way they're learning, in terms of, you know, now what they used to face, now everything was online, everything was on video. It was a heavy reliance on technology, and this new system, Microsoft Teams, that we were using at City. So we felt like setting up a community would be really good to help bring a sense of belonging into City. A lot of sort of freshers barely knew each other, and then got thrown onto this, so we felt like a lot of students might feel very isolated and also unsupported. So we wanted to make sure that there was sort of an outlet there for them to reach out and get a bit of advice. We wanted to offer some technical support, but not too technical, not anything that may be required that would go to IT, but some more basic, like support on Teams, support on using Zoom, and some more sort of student skills, digital skill, yeah, that says digital skills and engagement there, and soft skills, sort of organising your time, and a social community as well, so students could make new friends, have a chat with people. The recruitment process, we used our in-house temp agency called Unitemps, And we had a lot of applications, and we chose, we whittled them down so we could get a cross range of students with different skills from different schools within university, doing different courses and in sort of different years as well. And to do that, to be able to narrow it down, we did ask a few key sort of questions on sort of the top tips that the students would give to the community in terms of things like making the most of online lectures, how to take part the best in online tutorials, how to engage with online resources. And then we used sort of those tips in setting up the community and being able to promote it. The student digital assistants as well, who were running this community site, were also integrated into other teams within the university. So they worked closely with Students' Union and also our academic skills team webinars. They made appearances at the end of those to promote the community. So yeah, I'll now hand over to Noor. Is it Noor next?
Yeah, thank you, Ellie. So as Ellie said, that the change was pretty abrupt from having overnight, literally. I just want to apologize for the noise at the back, there's construction going on. But yeah, so I just want to say that, as Ellie said, that there was an abrupt change when we suddenly had to go online overnight. I think for students, being an advocate of the student voice, I think it was our responsibility for the students to feel more comfortable. So I think everyone dealing with studying online, teaching online, even for staff members, I think the community is basically there to help everyone, if anything. And mostly, for example, like first years, when they come in, they actually don't know what's happening, whether it's something as simple as submitting an assignment online or figuring out when their deadline is, or even looking at lecture capture when you want to look at old lecture to get notes or something like that. I think for everyone, I think this platform was there to basically tell them that there are external resources for them as staff members, also as students. There's simple stuff for people to make their presentations, for their notes. So as student digital assistants, we basically made it our goal to make that easy for everyone and let them know and make them aware of the fact that there are a lot of resources available to them for their studies and to teach as well, and make life easier for students and also staff. So basically, first on, we made guides, whether it was guides for Zoom, whether raising hands in terms of presentation, whether it was for Microsoft Teams or Moodle. We made guides for all of that. Next, basically, we started having webinars, as Elisa, as she mentioned. And in the end of them, we would let students know that we were there as individuals to help them. And I remember in one of the webinars, one girl actually approached me and she said that in her first year, she was in her first year and she just recently bought a Mac and she doesn't have any space available. And I actually found that so funny because I had gone through the same thing myself in my first years, and I could help her, and that made me so happy that I could help someone and I could help her, because exactly what I had gone through in first year she was going through. So that was really good like that. And I think so many people reached out to us one-on-one because they felt more comfortable also. And I think as assistants, we were more than happy to help them, whether it was individually or whether it was on the forum. And then we would also collect, like, just mostly ask questions and make a page of them in case someone wanted to come back to the answer or somebody else had the same question. Other than that, all four of us, as Ellie mentioned, we were all had different backgrounds. I was from I was studying computer science. Samantha was studying business management. Amanda was doing law, and Olivia was doing journalism. So stuff like that. Like, I think we all were able to just like make an all-rounded sense of belonging for everyone and help each other in different ways. I think we got a really, in the end, we were able to generate a podcast channel where we talked about different topics as well, whether it was getting jobs at university, whether it was feeling stressed or anxious during the lockdown times, how we dealt with it, how we think they should deal with it. and what would help them throughout these times, if anything. But yeah, I think we all just wanted to create a sense of presence for everyone. We also had debates where we were able to find out so much about other people's perspectives. I think that was one of my favorite things, when we had a debate on whether we should have our cameras on or off. And I always used to think that we should have our cameras on, until I actually, there were parents, there are students who actually explained why they wouldn't want their cameras on. And I found that so interesting. I think as assistants, we all got to learn so much. I think that day we wanted to speak actually even more, but we ran out of time because it was so much fun. And I think this opportunity for us was so great. And I think people should use this community, this site, to get help, to ask questions, because anyone else could have another question as well. Thank you. It's over to Elisabetta. Thank you.
Thank you, Noor, and well done with the construction noise behind you. I know that's really uncomfortable. I feel I'm in an industrial site as well at the moment. They're thankfully being a bit quiet, so hopefully that will last a bit. So yes, so we've heard there from Noor what a great team they were, and what the digital support assistants had. They all had different sets of skills, because they were all from sort of different backgrounds. As Noor mentioned, we had a student who was doing journalism, another one in business, Noor herself doing computers, and the fourth student was law. So all different sets of skills, but that we complemented each other very well. And they were such an enthusiastic, creative team. And it was a short project. It was quite short pilot, because we started this in November and it finished in May. So they did some really important work in sort of pushing forward this new initiative that had not happened before at City in terms of an online community space for students. So we all got together at the end, obviously, to evaluate the project. And so these are some of the key points that we picked up on. So these things are the learning that we would like to take forward into the next stage of the sort of new community for the new academic year. So the first kind of lesson was the launch of the community. As I mentioned earlier, we launched it in November, which even at the time we were probably aware would not be the best time to launch a student community. Obviously, if we had started in September as part of the induction, welcoming sort of process, then it might have been an easier way to get students to engage straight away. So thinking about that, we would also think about establishing sort of social habits, for want of a better word. For example, setting up student social coffee live events every Wednesday afternoon, where students could come in, meet other students, ask questions, interact, and get to know the digital advisors, and establish those habits. As we all know, building an online, well, it's well known, I don't know if we all know, but building an online community site does take a long time, and it's not something that happens overnight. So it's something that we kind of need to really grow. So establishing these kind of habits is a good way to maybe get that interaction and that engagement. So that's definitely one of the lessons we're going to sort of use moving on. The next kind of lesson was quite a big one, actually, but very a lot of questions around that, was that even though students were coming onto the team space, we'd created this community on a team space, and they were definitely joining it. They were, however, quite reluctant in coming forwards and in articulating any questions in the chat or, in the open forum. What they did seem to prefer, and as Noor mentioned, was to contact individual advisors to talk to them or ask them questions. The team saw that this was happening, and so took it upon themselves to do more of an outreach approach. So they were going into the academic support team webinars. They were sort of, for 5 minutes, they would talk about what they were doing and how they could help. And if anybody wanted to contact them, they could do so. And they got quite a good response through that. Interestingly enough, also they also went into their own individual WhatsApp groups from in their courses. So we know that parallel to the university, there is this whole online peer-to-peer support network that's going on out there, which is basically the WhatsApp groups. And in fact, one of the questions that came up in the student debate of cameras off and cameras on was, yes, WhatsApp groups are great for that peer-to-peer support, and there's a lot of good stuff happening there, and and students are feeling supported, are supporting each other. However, some students were asking, what can the university do in terms of maybe setting out a policy around codes of conduct on the WhatsApp groups? Because WhatsApp groups that are being set up for learning are, as far as they're concerned, part of the city university. So it's also about, I think, picking up on Sue's point about educating students to understand social media and things like WhatsApp. It's not so much that obviously the university cannot do anything about WhatsApp. It's a separate thing. It's a private platform. It's encrypted. It's not something that the university can do much about. The only thing that the university can do is support students in exploring how to use these sort of tools effectively and in a safe way, and not to kind of get into trouble through using them. So it's recognizing that WhatsApp groups were really part of the whole student community as well, these kind of outreach points, and getting the digital student advisors to go into the ones they had access to and to talk there about their role, and if anybody needed some support with their digital sort of skills, then that they were there to help them with that. And so they did a great job with this reaching out side of things. Then moving on to the last big point, which was an interesting one about the idea of trust. What really came through, again, in things like the debates, was that students really are feeling quite a lot of distrust at the moment, a lot of anxiety about being online, the sense that they probably aren't that comfortable with the idea of showing themselves, having them being recorded or putting their cameras on, because some are genuinely scared that those recordings may be taken and uploaded by other students onto YouTube or other social media spaces, or they could be abused in, with sort of unkind comments and so forth. So there was a real sense that we picked up on, that there was a sense of anxiety around being online. Another issue was that the team's community space that we had opened up was not a private one. So it was open to staff coming in as well. So we had some academics who joined in, as well as some professional support staff. And one school of thought about that was, great. If there's a query, if there's an issue that the digital student advisors could not answer, then we have some staff who could sort of chip in and support them with that. And obviously another school of thought who kind of argued, well, if you're a student and you've got an issue with your Moodle assignment and you don't quite know how to work it out, are you going to post in the community site that you're having a trouble doing that, and your lecturer can see that you're not coping very well with the basics? Is that going to give you any confidence in that? So that's a question that remains unanswered, and we're still working on that. However, the point about building up that sense of trust was something that really came through. And the digital student advisors really took that on board and worked really hard in developing their presence. So they kind of went with the idea, well, if the students won't come to us openly, let them get to know us really well, and we can build a sense of trust by letting them see who we are and what we're going through and what we're dealing with, as we're going through the same sort of challenges as obviously all the students are in learning online in a difficult time during a pandemic. So they created some excellent sort of artifacts in terms of a series of podcasts that proved to be pretty popular. They got quite a lot of hits, one particularly around, how they coped with learning online during a pandemic, how they coped with assessments, what to do in terms of well-being and their mental health, as well as guides and tips on the different sort of tools that are available in terms of organizing their time and so forth, as well as some really good blogs. And that kind of helped to develop that presence and getting, these digital students as real people, rather than just, oh, we're here to help you, but actually saying, we know what you're going through because this is what we're going through as well. So let's have conversations around this. So those, I think, were the kind of lessons that we felt that we need to take moving forward. I think that the digital student advisors were a great team, and they certainly did they were so enthusiastic, and they certainly, for us in our sort of context, broke through quite a few barriers, and moving forwards into the next iteration of the student community, we definitely will continue on their excellent work. So thank you very much. I think we're all right for time.
Yeah, we are doing well for time. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Noor, Ellie, and Elisabetta. I think we have some time for questions and discussion. And the first thing I would like to ask you is, in your evaluation of these three components of your resources, social media, podcasting, and blogging, was there any hierarchy in terms of how successful each one of these? Did you find that one of these were particularly successful in relation to the others?
Interesting question. Maybe Norm might have a stab at this. What did you feel was the most popular, worked better in that context?
Yeah, so in terms of popularity, I would definitely say, and something that worked more for us would be, I think, having these debate sessions. I think our debate session was very popular. And after that, I would probably say our podcast, because people would actually listen to it, and it was pre-recorded, so it was also pre-recorded, so it would be easy to like send out to people and stuff, and people would actually enjoy listening to it, and we would talk about relevant topics and stuff. So I think that was very successful for us as well. And other than that, I think we have another question also, which I think Liz can answer. I think we have another question in the question and answer section about if these resources are externally available. I don't think that.
We do.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll answer. No. Yes, I think I can put a link to some of the podcasts. Yes, in terms it's on our media space, and I think they are externally available. I will double check. I'm pretty sure they are actually. Yeah, I'll put that in the chat.
Oh, great. That will be, I'm sure, extremely useful, Elisabetta, Noor, and Ellie, for our the attendees of this session. And you dealt as well about the element you dealt as well with the element of trust. And that's quite often an issue in environments that are opened up. And also there is sometimes participation from staff. Do you think there's an element of lack of trust that comes from this element, that students have to share the same environment with members of staff, and sometimes this has a detrimental effect on the element of trust, on the trust they feel towards this environment?
I would say that definitely there was like there were times where students would feel more comfortable posting their questions on a students only site. So we even had a section for just students there. So it was always available there if students ever wanted to come and talk and stuff. Yeah, as you said, the element of trust, like in our debate on cameras on and off, we actually talk about that. That element of trust, like some people don't trust turning their cameras on because some of their trusts were broken during the time when they were having their cameras on. So there are people like that as well. Definitely, and that element is there because with social media and being behind your camera, we can't really control who is watching or who is accessing the links during a lecture, for example. So I think that element is definitely there, but I feel like amongst us as a community, as this site, I think there is a level of trust and uh, being comfortable. I think that we created ourselves as assistants, and that's why, as I mentioned before, that people did feel more comfortable coming to us as individuals, and we wanted to create that sense of trust for people so they could come to us for help. I think that was one of our aims as well, just being able to be there for people so they can trust us. Yeah.
Okay.
I think Ellie might have something to say about this as well, Ellie, about the staff student space issue.
I think I was probably the strongest advocate for making it a student only space, because I just sort of felt like if that's the focus, that's how it should be. And I really wanted students to feel like they could just be really open and honest. And I felt like everything, when you're at university, it's easy to feel like you're constantly being monitored and watched, and I wanted it to feel like